Hi, beautiful souls. I'm Elizabeth, and welcome to Untangling the Heart. This time is for you, so grab your cup of coffee or tea, whatever brings you a sense of comfort. Sit back, relax, and just settle in. As you listen today, just notice what resonates for you. There may be something here that's meant just for you. Just take what feels supportive and leave the rest. It's so good to have you here. So today we're talking about something that often runs underneath our radar that we might not recognize as happening within us in the moment, but it is important to become aware of. So in this episode, we're going to explore how emotional protective patterns form, how they begin, how they get started, and how they're quietly shaping our ability to trust not only ourselves, but to trust others as well. Okay? So let's get started. Our hearts weren't born guarded in protection mode. We come into this world naturally very open and curious and trusting, exploring everything, right? Sometimes we look at a little child and we might think, oh, I wish I could be that way again. I wish I could feel that way again. Well, you can, but we're going to move forward here. At some point, the experiences that we have teach us it's not safe to be vulnerable, or it's not safe to need others, or it could feel like it's not safe to be fully ourselves, that curious, open child ready to explore everything. The heart doesn't become guarded because there is something wrong with us. It becomes guarded because it learned that. For example, think of this story. Imagine an infant or a small child was left alone in a crib for hours crying. Unfortunately, this may have happened, but they're feeling very vulnerable, frightened, no one to rely on. So, how might that infant or child adapt? If this is an experience that happened even once or many times, it's possible that they found ways to soothe themselves. But now they might have a little bit of trouble trusting adults. It wasn't their fault or a failure, it was just survival. It was protection mode. So let me ask you this question. What if your protective patterns are your evidence that you had to adapt to something and not that you failed at something? Do you see how it's not our fault? We were in survival mode. So protection is not the same as safety or even feeling safe, right? So this one of the most important distinctions is that protection often says to us, don't get hurt again. Don't allow yourself to get hurt again. You've had this experience before. It didn't feel comfortable. I don't want to have that experience again. Or perhaps it's saying that protection is saying, stay small, fly under the radar. Don't allow yourself to be all who you are. Don't show up and say that joke in a crowd. Don't call attention to yourself. Stay small. Or what if it might say, protection can say, don't risk disappointment. I don't want to disappoint others. I don't want to be disappointed, so I'm not even going to take the risk. I won't do that thing or I won't say that thing because I'm afraid to take that risk because I feel like I just need to protect my heart. Many people spend years trying to protect themselves when what they really truly need is a deeper sense of inner safety. You see how protection and safety are really not the same thing. Protection could also look like sabotaging relationships, like getting very close to a commitment and then just fleeing or not being able to take that next step. Protection might look like acting very critical of others, like the impulse is to hurt others before we get hurt. And it's not really consciously intentional. It's not that you're failing or you're doing something on purpose to hurt others, but it's a protection to keep people at a distance because somewhere you may have learned that you didn't feel safe. Or, protection might look like not speaking up for yourself. You know, I've told stories about that about myself. Don't rock the boat. Don't make waves, right? Maybe some of you have heard that expression before. We're trying to fly under the radar to avoid confrontation. And sometimes it's just that perception that we're not safe. But really, if you look around, you are in a safe space. You just don't feel that. And that can be very compelling. On the other hand, safety instead of protection, safety says to us, you can handle whatever happens and you can stay connected to yourself. So safety might look like surrounding yourself with positive, uplifting people, a tribe, a community. You've heard of that. These are my people, right? You just can be yourself. You don't have to put on that protection mode. This is maybe a community or maybe even just one person who has your back. And then you begin to reciprocate and you have their backs as well. Or safety might look like setting healthy boundaries in relationships, whether it's in your work or your personal life. So to choose to feel what's right for you and refusing to ignore that gut feeling, that intuition, and starting to make decisions based on what feels right for you and based on your integrity. So, how do protective patterns form? Well, we've talked about the difference between protection and safety, but how do they really happen? Well, they can develop and create in our bodies after we have an experience. So perhaps you've had an experience of feeling rejected, whether it's you didn't get the job, whether you lost in a relationship, whatever it is, it could be rejection. A protective pattern, that protective wall can go up after being betrayed. That's a big one for a lot of people. Or being criticized. If there's someone whom you've had in your life who is constantly critical of you, just know that it's really not about you. They're having some challenges integrating in how they feel about themselves. And because it's very difficult and painful for them, they may reflect it back to you. Or it could be perhaps learning protective patterns after going through divorce or maybe several divorces. Could be emotional neglect, where, it's one thing about our bodies feeling physically safe, but our emotions are really important as well. And when they're not taken into consideration by those whom we feel or want to trust or feel like we should be trusting, that can trigger that as well. Or loss, any type of loss or repeated disappointment. And there's that word repeated. We'll talk about that. So imagine asking for help with something that's really important to you, and someone promises to show up and help, which happens very often. And at the last minute, they ditch you or they come up with an excuse. Now, maybe one time or two times, right? They have a valid reason. But if this becomes a pattern and becomes a pattern with other people in your life where you perceive that you're going to be left hanging after a while, your body learns to protect itself and no longer feels safe. So even after only one experience of rejection or betrayal or loss, any of those things that we've just talked about, we can create an emotion, a frequency that gets trapped in the body. It then becomes a program that's always on, that's running underneath the radar that we're not conscious of, but we're always running on that program. So what happens is our nervous system can begin to create rules for us, such as, I better not trust anyone too quickly. It's going to take me a long time to get to know someone. And I'm always looking for that red flag. I'm always expecting the other shoe to drop. I'm always expecting down the road that I'm going to get hurt. Or our nervous system can create this rule of don't ask for help. It's not worth it. No matter what I do, when I ask for help, I'll be disappointed. Remember? And this is often not conscious. Or a rule that our bodies can create is don't speak up. Don't stand up for yourself. Just allow everyone to be as they are, say what they want to say, do what they want to do. Even if you may have felt hurt in some way, your program may say it's not okay to speak up and talk about it. Or another one. Wow, this also can hit home. Don't get your hopes up. Don't create any expectations. Don't hope, don't feel, don't see, don't know. And that alone can keep us in this low feeling of lack. Don't get your hopes up. Don't create something bigger than you know you can create. Eventually, these rules, if you will, that our bodies have created become automatic. They become a default. So, what is that hidden cost of protection? Remember, protection, safety. Let's talk about protection still. What's that hidden cost? Protection helps us survive, especially if we are in immediate danger in a situation, right? Obviously, of course, that's how we're built. But sometimes we can perceive that we are in danger, even if there is no immediate evidence of this. Eventually, living in protection mode can begin to limit our lives. Well, what does that look like? We might have difficulty receiving love. Or here's a biggie, right? Overthinking decisions. Okay. How many of us have ever overthought making a decision and procrastinating and waiting and just having to overthink everything? Protection can show itself like the fear of being seen. Or here's another big one, the trouble asking for support. Remember, we talked about if we're running on a program where we've asked for help and then we've been let down and disappointed over and over again, we just don't want to ask for help anymore. And what does that do? That puts us in a position where we have to do everything for ourselves all the time. And many people run on that program for years, and it's exhausting. We can also keep people at arm's length, just that surface, hi, how are you? Good to see you. Oh, what's new? But never really getting to know the person and especially allowing them to get to know the real you, your hopes, your desires, your dreams, your fantasies, everything. It's too scary to do that. Also, constant self-doubt. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but often we all do is we second guess ourselves. Did I make the right decision? Should I have made another decision? Well, whatever decision you made, move forward and go with it, right? But we can have that constant self doubt. The strategy that once protected us can eventually become the thing that keeps us stuck. So, protective patterns often disguise themselves. They can be very sneaky, right? Sometimes we don't realize that we're in protection mode. Sometimes it's like, well, I'm very independent and I don't need to rely on anyone else. I can do it all myself. Great. You may have that personality where you enjoy that and not taking anything away from those of us who are like that, right? In being independent and learning to do things on your own is great. And yet, we were put into a society, of course, we can choose our community, but we were put together to be together and to help one another. It can often look like needing certainty before acting. Again, we talked about that overthinking, having everything in place and then never taking a step forward, always in planning mode. Okay, well, that's not quite good enough. That's not quite good enough. Or over preparing. When we over prepare, sometimes it's a feeling of lack running underneath like, well, there's not going to be enough. There won't be enough time, or there won't be enough food, or it won't be perfect. And that feeling of lack is that feeling of not feeling safe. And so we're protecting ourselves by over preparing. It could be perfectionism. I bet you know somebody who's displayed that at some point in their lives. I have to live beyond others' expectations for them to love me or acknowledge me. Now, that's not what we're thinking, but that could be the program that's running underneath, is having to be perfect. If I'm not perfect, I won't be accepted. It could also look like always staying busy, avoiding that feeling of being unsafe. Oh, well, I'm just going to do this and do that, and I'm going to keep myself busy all the time so I don't have to feel how I feel and I don't have to feel unsafe. And we talked about also keeping conversations on a surface level. Don't get too attached. They'll just disappoint me. So allow me to ask you this question. Let's think on this for a moment. What do you do when your heart feels uncertain? Take a moment. Your answer often reveals that protective strategy that you're using. Self trust comes before trusting others. Let me say that again. Trusting yourself comes before trusting others. Before you can trust others, you're your person, right? Many people think that their struggle is trusting others, but the deeper issue is, can I trust myself if things don't go as I planned or as I expected? So here are some great questions for us to reflect on today. Can I trust my intuition? What does that look like for you, intuition? Sometimes it's a feeling that comes down through thought, or it could be that gut feeling, right? You know you're supposed to go someplace, but you hold off, or you know you're not supposed to go someplace and you go anyway. Can I trust my choices? And can I trust myself to recover from disappointment? Remember, we're all going to be disappointed throughout our lives. Things don't always work out the way that we expect or anticipate. But I'll tell you something, sometimes they ultimately turn out even better. Remember, you may have been running deep programs based on past experiences and the emotions that were created and trapped in the body. So, I'd like to share a reflection from one of my coaching cards. It's a great question to ask ourselves when we're learning to trust ourselves again. This says, where have I already shown strength without fully recognizing it. If you take some time to reflect on this, you'll present yourself with some evidence that you can remember how to trust yourself again. Let me share that again. I'll read it again. Where have I already shown strength without fully recognizing it? So, what might that look like? You might have shown up for someone when they needed help. Hmm. Kind of means you're trustworthy, doesn't it? Or you said no to something that you didn't really want to do. I know that's hard for some people, and no judgment at all. We're all learning. But you were able to say no or no, thank you. Or this is a fun one. You took a nap or you allowed yourself some downtime instead of constantly pushing through and being exhausted all the time and having to be that one person where you're there for everybody all the time. You know what? It's time for you to be there for you. So let's talk about the difference between discernment and defensiveness. Discernment, when we discern something, when we reflect and we really integrate it, it says, I will pay attention. I'll be aware, I'll observe, but I'm not going to be attached to the outcome. That's a challenging one for a lot of people. Pay attention, be aware, observe the situation, but don't get emotionally attached in the moment to the outcome. That's discernment. So when we're defensive, on the other end, it says, I'm going to assume that I'm in danger. I'm going to be ready to be hurt or disappointed or on guard. I just know it's going to happen. I just know it's going to happen. Guess what? You're creating that, right? But you're on guard all the time. Your nervous system is on guard all the time. Discernment keeps us wise, but defensiveness keeps us closed. Remember, it's like you're putting up armor in front of you and you're surrounding yourself just waiting to be attacked. Healing isn't becoming naive. It is learning how to remain open while staying aware. Remember how we talked about a little while ago an infant and a young child and how they're open to all kinds of possibilities. They're not afraid of taking a couple of steps and falling down. They're not afraid to explore things. They're curious. Healing is learning and relearning and remembering how to be curious without judgment attached to that. Isn't that amazing? You're amazing. So, trusting yourself is not this big, huge leap. All it is a slow and steady practice, just loving yourself throughout the whole process. Many people think that trust is something you either have or you don't have, but really it's built through tiny little steps and small moments. For example, when you honor your own needs, when you need a break, or again, you need a nap, or you need food. How many times have I heard people share with me, well, I didn't have time to eat. You're not nourishing yourself. And there are lots of ways to nourish ourselves, but your body needs fuel, right? Or you do some exercise. That's honoring your own needs, movement. You keep promises to yourself. For example, you might commit to walking 15 minutes a day, even if it's just a slow stroll, or just going out and breathing the fresh air for 5 minutes a day. It can be tiny little steps. But when you promise yourself that, one of the ways that helps is you can say, you know, there's no compromise. I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to compromise anything. And it's amazing how easily it gets integrated into your day. Or it might look like listening to your body's signals. Listen and then ask yourself, just be curious. What's going on there? Why am I clearing my throat? What is that about? Right? Or why did that headache just come on? What's that about? Or it might look like taking one small courageous step, saying no thank you instead of yes, setting your alarm 15 minutes earlier, taking that time for you, going to bed 15 minutes earlier, maybe listening to a meditation, or maybe even leaving work on time. Again, building self-trust grows through evidence. So what does the heart need to trust again? It rarely responds to force. It responds to consistency, compassion, patience, and being present to yourself. It begins when we stop judging our actions and we instead begin to understand them. The heart can soften when it realizes that no longer has to fight the battles it once fought alone. And finally, trusting doesn't mean having all the answers. Have you ever stood in one of those long queue lines, like at a theme park, waiting to get on a ride that only lasts 3 minutes and you're on that line for hours maybe? Well, that's what it's like to be waiting until you feel you know all the answers. Trust yourself is not being certain. Trust is moving forward while staying connected to yourself. So here's one last thing to reflect on. It's another card from my deck, and it says, not everything needs clarity yet. Some things are still becoming. Life often organizes beyond what we can currently see. So the question to ask ourselves is, what might it feel like to trust the process that is underway? You can trust yourself and still feel afraid. You can trust yourself and still have questions. You can trust yourself and still be learning. How powerful is this? I trust the unfolding of my path. Perhaps the goal isn't for us to get rid of every protective pattern. It's just to simply recognize them with compassion and ask ourselves, are they still needed, or are they just needed for today? Maybe that's what trust really is, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to stay connected to ourselves as we move forward. If something in this resonated with you today, just know you're not alone in this, and nothing about your experience is random. If one person came to mind while you were listening, feel free to share this conversation with them. You can find Untangling the Heart on YouTube, LinkedIn, and wherever you enjoy podcasts. And be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss a conversation. And thank you for being here today. Until next time, from my heart to yours.
We've all got stories we don't say out loud, little knots we hide away. You're not broken, you're just learning to be honest with what you feel today. This is untangling the heart, one brave breath, one tiny start, finding strength in every scar and every part. You're not falling apart, you're just untangling.